in its normal time slot. The Wednesday Night Golf Show from Awesemo.com. Ben Raza, Jason Roslin, you know the drill. On to week 2 of the new season. Sanderson Farms with their own event now. They get their own week. So we're here to break it down. This event, I'm interested to hear your thoughts because, to tell you the truth, it was always opposite of WGC. It's not an event that I was too familiar with.
Yeah, same. And again, I said last week to everybody, and I'll say this week, pardon my construction here. We've moved into the new house, but there's literally nothing on the walls yet. Thought it would go a little smoother than it did, but these things always happen that way, right? You always think they're going to go smoother. Then the dishwasher doesn't work, and then the shower doesn't drain.
Yeah, moving is terrible, but you're making progress.
Yeah, we're making progress. So next week, hopefully we'll have some Star Wars pictures on the walls or something like that. So in the meantime, we're going to talk about the Sanderson Farms, which, it's been around for so long. So I think that's why finally the PGA Tour decided to give it its own week. It's pretty well attended in the area. Obviously not too much by the players, with Joaquin Niemann really being the star of the field. But nonetheless, Draftkings doesn't really care. They're putting out $50K to first, so I've got no problem playing for that.
No doubt about it. And before we're about to dive into it, but I do want to say our sponsor, Fantasydraft, is doing some good stuff. They are the only place where you can play break-free, which is huge. You save that. They're in the subscription base, and if you want to try it out, if you haven't signed up, promo code AWESEMO, a free 7-day trial membership on your first $1,000 in rake-free entries. So go check that out. They've got a lot going on. They've been running some big NFL contests. They have some golf, and I'm hoping to see that pump up as the season continues. But like you said, this tournament down in Mississippi, par 72, it's going to be, scores are going to be low, but we do have, and I know it's an early season, it looks like we have a little weather to talk about.
Yeah, we do. It looks like it. And just one more note on Fantasydraft, if you don't play a ton of volume, let's say 100 or 200 a week, that rake-free subscription, that can really save you. And it is the matter of getting into the cash line and not. I can tell you that back-to-back weeks now, I had a $550 team on one of the other sites that has rake, obviously, and I bubbled it. Week before that, $1,500, I bubbled it. There was no rake, I would have cashed. So definitely makes a difference. One, to just bring that up real quick. However, yeah, it looks like we're just going to have wind. Now, what does that really mean, right? Well, that's actually the worst thing. Players can deal with the rain fine, but it looks like we're going to have wind in it. Again, this is the weather. It can change on a dime, but normally it's pretty consistent at least. Looks like the PM AM wave is going to get hit back-to-back days. It looks like there might be a front rolling in on Thursday night, Thursday evening, and then into Friday morning. So, what are you seeing? I'm seeing like a little calmer Thursday evening, 15 miles an hour, and then I'm seeing like 20 to 25 on Friday morning, and that could be pretty difficult.
So, yeah, I'm in total agreement. What I really see when you look at Thursday, it looks like a pretty standard day where, the afternoon traditionally plays a little harder and the wind gets up a little, but nothing where there's going to be a big advantage. The big advantage looks to be that Friday morning looks a lot worse than Friday afternoon, which is atypical. And so that means what you just said, if for anyone watching who's maybe a little new to golf, if you play in the afternoon on Thursday, you get the early team times on Friday. Those guys look to have the worst of it on both ends. And that's where you get a split that could be actually a really big deal.
Yeah, certainly. And again, when we're talking about a half a shot, right, let's say on each side, it does add up quite a bit, and it can add up pretty quickly. Obviously, we've seen in the past, it obviously happened a lot more at the Open Championship. We mention that every time we talk about weather. But it's interesting here because you got guys like Scotty Scheffler and Corey Connors, who, if now the ownership projections just came out a little bit ago. And let me just verify here, but I'm pretty sure those two guys I just mentioned, Scheffler and Connors, both very close to the top in terms of ownership. Looks like Scheffler is number 5 on the board, and Connors is number 3. What do you make of those two guys playing in the afternoon as a whole? Are you going to play underneath them now because of this, or are you just going to do what we do, say, tee time stack and do more in the morning time, more in the AM, PM wave?
That's more what it is. I'm making a couple teams where I'm just eliminating the bad, quote unquote, the bad wave. But then I'm not gonna, there are some guys. Aaron Wise is a player that I really like. We'll get into. He's on the wrong side of it. You mentioned Scotty Sheff. There are players, and I'm not just gonna toss them aside completely because it's not that drastic. But I will say I'm weighing a little more. I'm taking, I guess, potential splits a little more serious this year because of the cut. We have that top 65. And so, a split can really decimate. You're going to see on some weeks a really high percentage of the guys who get through on one given wave.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect way to just bring up maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes of coverage of last week. And we saw, Ben made it a point to let our subscribers know a couple of times about the 65 rule, and bam, we knew it would come into effect right away. And sure enough, it did. It knocked out so much chalk. It was crazy. Jason Kokrak, Sepp Straka, among many others that were right on that number. We're going to see that happen a lot this year. I think it was like 10 events that somebody looked at, and it was like 100 less golfers that made the cut if the cut was top 65 and more out of 10 events. So that's about 10 golfers. And last week, I think it was 18, if I'm not mistaken, that was sent home packing. So I like it. In my results, I was maybe, I got 8 of 150 through, which I think maybe was a little bit better than the field. But I think it makes every 6 of 6 live. So even if you have one, and that's what I like about it. I didn't have a great week. Robbie Shelton's bogey on 18 ended up costing me another cash in the 500. But I feel like even the 5 of 6, I had a 5 of 6 that had Maverick McNeely. It came in 14th in the 500. That stuff is going to happen more and more this year, which I think I like, because if you nail your core, it's likely you're still going to cash.
I'm definitely a fan of it. I like the challenge. You just have to go in with the mindset. If you're playing 20 lineups on a lot of weeks, if you get 1 6 of 6, that's good. And it's counterintuitive. It feels weird, but I like that challenge. Even last week, I didn't play a ton of lineups. I played around 15, I think, and I had 1 6 of 6, and I was actually really happy. And the week turned out, fine. And that's what you're going to get in the 5 of 6s. As you mentioned, I saw your team with Maverick, who blew up on Friday. That team hung on because the 5 of 6s are not that far behind. So it's a totally different animal this year. It's exciting. It's fun. But the tee time splits could really make a difference on that cut line, maybe a little more so than in past years.
Well, and if you look normally, it really is split between the two normally. So 32 and 32 or something in that range that end up making it through. You could see something like 40 and 25 this week, maybe even 45 and 20 when we get the tee time splits that are better. I mean, there's not going to be many guys that end up making it through on the bad splits. It's just that 1 or 2 shots is going to make a difference. So now in the morning, one of the chalk guys and one of the best guys in the field, I should say 2 of the best guys in the field, Emiliano Grillo and Cameron Smith going off of 1 and 10 at 7-10. If you want to buy into what we're saying here, is that where you start your lineups, or are you going higher into the Joaquin Niemann again?
So Niemann, I have no problem. He was on this short list of guys that I think a lot of people saw coming to break through, and he did it. And like many guys, what happened? He just made his putts. We know how good of a ball striker he is. Sanderson can't continue that, but he is the most expensive guy in the field. Chad is already talking about Grillo. What can I say? He can't putt. He's been incredibly frustrating. He's cost me a lot of money in the past, cost a lot of people money in the past, but he is on the right side of this wave. I am interested, and I definitely have warmed up to going over on Grillo this week.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me is price. When you look, right, you go to his off the tee numbers and approach numbers, and you got to go back to the Honda Classic to find him losing strokes ball striking. It's pretty insane. If he had a bad week off the tee, then he had a good week on his approach. It's just some insanely good, consistent ball striking numbers. The putting is insanely bad. We know this. It's really so bad. I mean, over 4 strokes lost putting for the year. It happened to him 6 times. I mean, that's insane. It's really insane. It cost Grillo. You said it cost us a lot of money. It definitely did. It's cost Grillo probably way more.
It's debatable.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's debatable.
It's really disturbing, but he's going to have to turn that around. we know that, but there is no denying, as you mentioned, this guy is on the short list of best ball strikers in this field and even in stronger fields than this. This is a weak field. So with that price, I don't mind it. Cam Smith is not a guy that I'm too into, to be honest. I can't. The stats are all over the place. I would probably look to someone, just looking at top end guys that maybe fit the AM, which is kind of what we want to target. I'm going to throw out Brian Harmon, who's in that same price range. Really good tee to green last week. Just couldn't get the putter going, but we know historically he can do that. So I have no problem with him either.
Yeah, it's interesting. Harmon historically is one of the best putters. Now, last week I had him gaining 5 strokes putting last week. Do I have that wrong? Do I have
Who? Brian Harmon?
Yeah, Harmon.
Let's go to the videotape. Let's see. Sure. Brian Harmon. Last week, see, it's really interesting. I will say, like many people, I use Fantasy National, and I believe they had maybe a fix earlier in the week because some of these guys' stats changed.
Okay.
It looks like Brian Harmon got it dialed in on the greens. Let's go with a new narrative that he'll continue that.
I like it. And I think what the narrative that you were going on was he had a good ball striking week, which is when he has a good ball striking week, you see he comes, third, I think, last week. And that's the thing. And if you look at, going back to the Travelers, tee to green, he's played really well since the Travelers. He's gained tee to green every single week. That's 7 straight. So, like Brian Harmon, find that consistency. I remember sitting with him at the TOC a couple of years ago and sharing some drinks watching the Georgia game. And he's just kind of a very unassuming guy. He's one of my favorites. That year that he won at Eagle Point won me a lot of money. So definitely in on Harmon. Does price $9,700? Does that scare you off? And that scares other people off.
I think it definitely scares other people off because it is some sticker shock. But you know what? In a field like this, I think it's pretty wide open. There's some other guys up there. We've mentioned Neiman. Obviously, we have Sanjay and Benny on, who are real players, of course. Sneds and Lucas Glover. And then, I know you, like many people, think Scotty Scheffler is ready to win right now, and he is. Clearly, we'll get to him, but I have no problem with it. I think you can build balanced and have Harmon be your first man in.
So let's talk about the golf course for a second. Country Club of Jackson, of course, as Ben said, for most of us, probably the first time we're going to see it, first time we're going to read about it. It's a 7,400 yarder, par 72. So on the shorter side for par 72. We saw Cam Champ, who literally only does 2 things good, and sometimes it's only one thing good, and it's drive the ball and putt. So I looked up his approach from last year here. He only gained about 2 for the whole tournament. So do you think Cam's Champ was an anomaly here last year? Or do you think a guy that bombs the ball and putts well can get away with having a bad approach game?
So I think he showed that there are multiple ways to get, because we've got guys like Peter Malnati, Nick Taylor, other guys in the past who have excelled, and they're not.
Armor, yep.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Cam Champ showed that it's not one type. You can get away with kind of bomb and gouge. Now, when you gain 9 strokes putting, you should be possibly winning. That's really an insane amount. So anyone that does that's going to be successful. But I think he showed that if you're really aggressive off the tee, pending that you're not in the deep stuff, you can get away with it and you can still hit these greens from maybe the second cut.
Yeah, I guess that kind of obsessed me. One of the guys that came out of the Korn Ferry Tour this year that just absolutely bombs the ball, and that's basically all he does is this Christoph Ventura guy who was pretty popular last week. And I mentioned to you, I'm like, this guy cannot hit a fairway if you gave him a putter. And it showed last week. This feels like it would be a much better course, but he's not here. There are plenty of other guys that we'll get to talk about. So you're basically then saying, throwing it out, anybody, any type can win here? Or are you looking at driving distance a little bit more because of Cam Champ just thrashing the field last year?
I looked at it, and I hear you hear me. I hear an echo, but
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. It could be my computer. Could be.
Yeah, I have a feeling. But God, that's such a good thing. I'm not gonna lie. Aaron Wise is a guy who can get away with that, and it made me more apt to really go to him just because I did use Cameron Champ kind of as that model. But other than that, I didn't get too crazy into a course fit. I think the guys talent-wise that can do it, go to them, and then, just see what really happens.
All right, so let's move down the list a little bit here. One of your boys who broke through last year, backed price pretty high. We haven't seen him in a little while, and we haven't seen him play good in a long time. Actually, probably since his win. I don't know if he's made a cut. Dylan Fratelli, 9,200. What are you doing with him this week?
He's in an interesting. So him and JT Poston are guys that a little overpriced for me. I definitely like Grillo over them. But you look at if Fratelli's game, he's a good driver of the ball. Everything else is hit and miss. But he's, we both, I think, thought that maybe he's a little more talented than others. And look, he broke through, grabbed a win late in the season. So if I can get there, he's in the right side of the wave. He's not a priority per se. I do think guys like Grillo, you mentioned Corey Connors, another one who really impressive stretch at the end of last year. I think they're more the priority for me over a guy like Fratelli.
Yeah, and he's going off at 7:42, so he does have a good tee time. He's playing with Siwoo Kim, who we can talk about for a second, and Joaquin Niemann. What do you make of Siwoo Kim? Somebody on Twitter I saw, he's like, hey, just to let everybody know, Scotty Scheffler is pretty much the same age as Siwoo Kim, and we've seen Siwoo Kim for, 4 or 5 years now? So, yeah, what do you make of Siwoo Kim this week?
Siwoo, it's, God, just spin the wheel. You never know what you're going to get with this guy. I guess you could say his irons are trending upward, but honestly, he's someone that always has some win equity. The miscut equity is gigantic. So I try to get him when he's lightly owned, and other than that, just sprinkle. Do you have a strong take on him?
He's a guy that you definitely can't trust in cash. I think we can start with that. I think he's a perfect GPP candidate because he's up and down. You good?
Yeah, keep going. I'm doing my best here. Oh man,
why is there an echo?
No, your voice sounds. Your microphone makes your voice sound a little different. And chat you sound like.
What? I have no idea.
No, you'll have to play the show back for your own entertainment.
Is it bad? I don't understand.
It's hilarious.
You're going to have to explain it to me some other time. But anyways, what do I sound like, Batman?
Oh, man. God, this is good stuff. Sanderson Farms, people, this is what you get. It is really something.
What does it sound like? You're going to have to tell me.
Sounds like, as Chad perfectly aptly said, it sounds like the guy from Happy Gilmore. He's like, you can count on me waiting for you.
You can count on me and you in the parking lot.
Oh, dear God.
Really? So maybe I just mutated overnight. I'm not really sure. Or maybe there's a setting. So I will say I bought a new microphone because my other one wasn't working. And this one makes me sound like I'm the maniac with the staple out of his head, I guess those guys.
Dear God. Well, this show will go down in the archives. That much I can promise you. Win, lose, or draw, but we will carry on.
Yes. I'm sorry, chat. I apologize if I sound like the guy from Happy Gilmore. I have no idea what could be causing that at this point. But and anyways, I can always switch my microphone if people can't take it.
Mochi.
Yeah, we'll work for it. I probably sound better now, right?
You're back. Thank you, God. Okay. I couldn't take it. As Josh just pointed out, you sound like in 60 Minutes when they, it's like an informant and they have to make the guy's voice altered.
Oh, maybe I got a new career ahead of me then.
You certainly do.
It sound good?
God, that was fantastic.
It's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Amazing. Now we're back in business. Little golf talk. We may have to turn that microphone back on periodic throughout the year.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to just bust it in just to add periods, and we'll work with that on the back end. Josh and I at another time, as Josh in from behind the glass. We'll have to work on that before because we want to cause that hilarious. But we'll move on and we're getting rid of the echo, and we're apologize here to our folks. I didn't know I had a new career in front of me.
Fantastic.
That is awesome.
Anyway,
So we were talking about Si Woo Kim.
Yes. Yes, we were.
As deep as my voice can be, and sounding normal. All right, so there's actually a couple of guys I want to talk to you about now that my microphone is normal. Old guys that people love to play, namely Charlie Hoffman, Jason Duff. What do you make of these guys? Did you play them ever?
So I tell you what, Charlie Hoffman is a guy late in the season. I could not get him right, and his putting was just broken. Now, he got a long stretch off because naturally his FedEx Cup ranking couldn't get him into the later events. This is certainly anecdotal. I did listen to an interview today with him. He does love this course, he said. They all say that, though. Right side of the wave, and that is enough for – I do hear an echo, but that was enough for me to get interested in him and take a stab that maybe he can rebound with this new season.
Yeah, it was really bad, like to the tune of I gotta go tell you. I don't think I'd ever seen his putting because he's not that bad of a putter, or at least I didn't think so. But I mean, we're talking about 5 straight events where he lost strokes putting. There was a stretch at the Travelers where three tournaments in a row he lost 2.2, 1.5, 1.7 on average per round. So yeah, it got really bad. Tee to green game wasn't any better. So I'm out. I'd rather go down to the 7,200 guys like Robbie Shelton and such. What about Jason Duffner, who played a little bit better last week, right?
He's, Duff, it's just – I like to target him. You mentioned this is a par 72, but it's very reasonable distance. I like that about him because he's not a long hitter. Off the tee game has been much better. He's another one, though. Awful. He's not a good putter. We know this. He's going to have to make some of those 10-footers because you need to go low here. He's had some, top-end finishes, Wells Fargo, Memorial, which are tougher tracks than this. So if you want to take a flyer on it, I get it. Honestly, I prefer Charlie Hoffman, as gross as that sounds. But Duffner, pedigree-wise, is better than most. And when we look at the pricing, he falls in the middle of the pack this week.
He does. Yep, he does. All right, so let me just go back to one guy that I wanted to talk to you about. Looks like he's going to be really chalky. The course history is fantastic. He's got basically 4 top 30s since 2014. Talk about Vaughn Taylor. I just can't – I would pay $100 more for Emiliano Grillo over Vaughn Taylor forever. But it looks like he's also going to be chalky. What do you make of that?
So I think, just a general – I will say a general rule because I think it's true. When we get to a new course and early in the year, I think people have limited things, so they look to course history. And Vaughn Taylor's played here a bunch, done kind of a Vaughn Taylor-esque thing. He comes in 20th a lot, and he's priced up for that reason. So I'm the same way. If I was building – and I mean, I am playing a little cash. He's that type of player. I feel pretty good he makes the weekend. But for what you're paying – I'm with you. I'd rather take a stab with one of the better ball strikers who can't putt and hope I hit lightning in a bottle. Because if you told me Grillo or Vaughn Taylor is who's more likely to win this week, I would say clearly Grillo.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with you, and that's why I guess I'm not really sure why Vaughn Taylor's that high. Maybe it's just people are playing both of those, pairing them together. But, you got other guys in that range that, are okay. Let's just check out. Gale's going off at 7:10, as we already discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And Vaughn Taylor, Nick Taylor, who's also very good course history, and Vaughn's going off 8:34. So they're both they are on the good side of the draw at the very minimum. So if you do want to play Vaughn and understand, I can understand such. Now, what are you doing with Lucas Glover and Son Jam? We breezed over them, but according to our ownership projections, which of course, if you're a premium member at Osmo or an Osmo Plus member, you can get every week, and they are normally quite typically very good. What are you doing with Glover and M projected to be the highest owned of this slate?
So they're both, first thing to note, they're both on the quote-unquote wrong side of the draw. Lucas Glover plays here all the time. I think it sets up well. He's a Southern guy. Son GM is really hard to peg because he's doing a lot of heavy lifting with the putter. We know he's a really good player. I'm not saying that, but I just have a tough time kind of getting over him if he's going to be popular and he's on the wrong side of the wave. So for me, Scheffler and Glover specifically, I'm still going to try to get exposure, even though they're on the wrong side. But someone like Sungjae Im is going to get squeezed for me.
Yeah, and Im, as we've pointed out quite a bit, he's relied on his putter. Last week to the tune of almost 8 strokes putting. Now, granted, he has shown he's a really good putter. I mean, he's gained strokes putting in looks like 8 of the last 9 events. Striking was okay last week. He gained just about a half a stroke per round. So I'm actually more okay with Sungjae Im. I don't like that he's on the bad the bad draw, but I'm a little bit more okay with Sungjae Im only because he lost almost 4 strokes around the green last week. It was really bad, and he still ended up in the top 20.
I will say, he has an amazing, now hole-in-ones notwithstanding, he has an amazing way of kind of hanging there when he doesn't have his best stuff. I give him credit for that. Sungjae Im is really good at kind of, if one thing is not working, he can get hot with the putter. If the putter is cold, the ball striking is good enough. He has a really well-rounded game. And I do like that, but I'm looking at this early wave, which we kind of want to target. There are 2 names that stuck out to me just in terms of, I guess, pedigree, for lack of a better word. The first was Kyle Stanley, and the second, who we just got asked in premium chat about, is Luke List. Do either of them do anything for you?
Oh, man. So, yeah, I'll start with Kyle Stanley. Kyle Stanley does do something for me because I think that he's shown proximity from over 200 yards. He's pretty good. He puts the ball in play all the time. I mean, it's been a while. I'm looking here. His ball striking numbers, he hasn't lost anything since the Arnold Palmer, which is, last March. So pretty good numbers there. I know it's nothing fantastic. I mean, he's not gaining 2 strokes per round or anything like that. We know it's his putting. And I think here you don't have to make as many putts to get to the weekend. Now, granted, Cam Champ won at 21 under, but I looked before him. It was most of the time like 15 or 14 under where most of the pack was last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that says to me at a par 72 that you don't really need to be that far under par, maybe 1 or 2 under. And so I think Kyle Stanley should be able to get there on the good side of the draw pretty easily.
Kyle Stanley, for me, I have no problem with him. Luke List a little dicier. His form has been not great. He almost broke. He was one of those guys, and I don't know what this really means, but there are certain guys where they are building up to a win, and then they lose in a playoff, or they don't get there, and then they kind of regress for a while. And I feel like that's what happened with List. He hung in there for some big events, and then it's been pretty murky. But I will say, par 72, with his distance, he can attack these par 5s. On the right side of the wave, they are both guys I'm taking a strong look at, because I'll lean to the long-term form over some of these unknowns, especially with this draw.
So List had that PGA run, right, where, he kind of came out of nowhere at Bethpage and played pretty well. Since then, lost strokes and ball striking every single. That's real bad for as bad a putter as someone as Luke List. That he won't see a weekend for a long time. So maybe the break, he hasn't played since the BMW, so he's got over a month off. Maybe that gave him some time to get it together. He does have a second place here back in 2016. So that does say to me again that distance can prevail here if you're putting. So I'm okay with Luke List, but I don't know that he's going to make my $500 lineups this week, which I got a couple of.
Yeah, no, not for me either.
Yeah, I think I may look to him. Again, it depends on ownership, of course, right, where it all ends out. We have got him projected at.
Got to be low, right?
Kyle Stanley's still pretty high. He's about 15%. But Luke List, people have come off the train, and he's going to be about 5.8%. So I wouldn't mind going 15% in the $8. That's probably where I'll end up. He's got a good tee time. And like I said, again, we know he's been close. Played at the PGA, played really well. He putted extremely well. So, yeah, I'm okay with Luke List, playing Kyle Stanley in a couple of my important lineups.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think, again, it's a mix of, we got to see some of these Korn Ferry graduates and newcomers. There's going to be Robbie Shelton's going to be really popular. I'm not sure I get over on him. We'll talk about Joseph Bramlett. Harry Higgs is another one on the right side of the draw. I know you had mentioned him last week, and he played well, and the price didn't really adjust. One more guy, though. This guy's, and we talk on the show a lot, and we're going to be talking about this certainly throughout the year, is we like to pair up some tee times here and there. Kyle Stanley is playing with Matt Jones. And Matt Jones is someone, obviously, he's on the good side of the wave since Kyle Stanley is, who last week was really impressive and, came in 10th at Greenbrier. I think his game actually fits here. Now, he's 0 for 3 in made cuts at the Sanderson, but I think that actually kind of helps keep the price down and keep the ownership down.
Yeah, I think it'll probably scare some people off. It concerns me a little bit because, why with a guy that consistently gaining strokes off the tee is he missing this cut here? But he did. He had a really good week last week. 10th, 10th down at the Military Tribute. I don't know. He went through a stretch at the Valero where he had 3 good tournaments tee to green in a row. But other than that, he didn't really put back-to-back performances all year together. Tee to green that was anything to write home about. Yeah, it looks like he's trending towards 10%. Honestly, that seems a little high for me at 7,600. I guess I'd rather just go to somebody like Sam Burns, who missed the cut last week because he was atrocious around the green, maybe even a little worse on the approaches, but off the tee looked good and putting looked good, which good recipe for success. Good recipe for success, obviously, with Cam Champ doing the exact same thing last year. So what say you about Sam Burns versus Matt Jones, just straight up 1-to-1 in a one-off?
So Sam Burns is such a tricky thing because right now, like I said, I'm not many things, and at the bottom of the list would be Doctor. But when I heard he broke his ankle, the last thing I thought is that I'm going to be playing Sam Burns at the beginning of the swing season. So he was in the field last week, and his irons were bad. We know that his off the tee game is extremely strong. That's his best. He can get hot with the putter too. So he has that combination, as you mentioned, as Cam Champ did. But I just have trouble backing a guy who's lost in 7 out of his last 8 events with the irons. That's a tough ask for me, especially with the health, where I know he's got to be healthy enough to play, but he's got to have, I don't know, broken ankle seems like a somewhat big deal.
Yeah, it does. And similarly, not from the broken ankle standpoint, but from a guy who's really bad with his irons, but really good putting and really good off the tee is Wyndham Clark. I almost feel like Burns and Clark are very similar. And Burns played really well last year, came in 3rd. Clark has 2 made cuts here and 2 tries. I think that, to be completely honest, I think they're very similar players, and I like both of them a lot this week. They've both shown that they can putt really well, and they both are extremely good off the tee. So did Wyndham Clark catch your eye at all? I'll check the draw while you're up.
Wyndham Clark is the
Clark.
He's the crypt, and he's such an atypical player. We talk about him often because he doesn't do it like your boy Jordan Spieth. He doesn't do it the way we traditionally see, where it's like extreme ball striking. Then when the guy putts well, he breaks through. Like Wyndham Clark is a phenomenal putter, and he's a phenomenal off the tee guy. Great scrambler. Worst irons, maybe, barring the real bad guys. And that's just so bizarre. So, his price, he's in the upper mid-range. He's probably an interesting pivot off someone like Aaron Wise, who's going to garner ownership. I definitely like Wise more. There's no doubt about it. But in an MME format, you're looking at the best ball. When you can putt like that, you're certainly in the conversation.
Absolutely. Now, Wise, 1231. Did that bring your ownership down when you kind of took a look at the weather and took a look at his tee time, or?
It did. It was, it's not what I wanted to see. Now there are certain guys, Scotty Scheffler is another one where I'm still going to make room for them on teams because they're guys that even in a bad draw, they can get to the weekend and make up ground with the last 36 holes. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't, a concern that Wise probably has to face maybe less ideal conditions than some of the other players that are around his price point. That's a little tricky.
Yep. We finally found my headphones. This should fix an echo. Should I put the other one back on? Should I put the other mic back on now?
Maybe for your hot take at the end of the show. Give the people what they want.
What they want, I'll throw it in there. I'll just I'll put the mic back on and give my hot take. All right, that's a good idea. Okay. All right, so a couple of other names from the Corn Ferry Tour that I wanted to bring up with you that may not have played great last week, but Ryan Brem, he's a guy that 8th in driving distance. We've seen him a couple of years ago on the PGA Tour. He made a decent amount of cuts, nothing serious, but it seems like he might be garnishing a little bit of attention this week, just maybe because of that driving distance. Any of these guys catch your eye before I start rattling off some names?
Not really. Give me some names that kind of caught maybe your eye and that might make the pool for you.
Yeah, so Scott Harrington is one.
Okay.
Ring a bell to you at all?
So it was a name of, when I tuned in a good amount last week and I saw him kind of lurking, and he finished, I think, around 20. I don't have it in front of me, like around 20th or so. So,
Yeah, 24th, and he's a guy ranked 10th last year in driving distance on the Corn Ferry Tour, so obviously can bomb it out there with the best of them, and only gained about a quarter of a stroke off the tee, and I think that has to do last week with the course just being shorter and not being able to use that distance to his advantage. Gained 4 strokes or just 3.6 strokes putting, so obviously he's a little hot with the putter. So with that being said, it looks like the form is pretty good, 6-14, 43, 24. In his last 4 starts over the last 6 weeks. So I'm interested here. He only lost strokes around the green last week. I think a guy at 6,900, not many people are going to know about him yet, obviously. Interested in him. Does have the bad tee time at 145. Again, these guys, I'm not going to lie, it's tough because when these guys 145, 155, there's another one of my favorites, Doug Gim. That's round 2. I'm sorry. Harrington, I apologize. I was 8:45 on round 1. So Harrington's actually
good.
Yep, sorry, he's good. I had clicked on the Friday's tee times just to see the breakout. So yeah, Scott Harrington is one. Another one that his dad is. If you're a PGA Tour Live subscriber, you've heard Mark McCumber talk quite a bit, and it's his son Tyler. Made the cut last week, if I'm not mistaken. Also ranked in the top 25 in driving distance. Did Tyler McCumber cross your bar at all?
He did not. Not gonna lie. So I'm interested to see what you think, because we all have, I don't want to say biases, but one of the hardest things to do is to go right back to somebody. Maverick is the same price. Now, Maverick, I do think there is something to Maverick McNeely. He's got the Oracle. He's the flashy guy, and he really has not performed. You like Tyler McCumber over someone like Maverick this week?
Yeah, and it's Maverick got himself into really good position, had that hole out on 12, got himself to 3 under, was looking pretty good. And honestly, I stopped looking at my phone Friday morning because Hovland had got to 3 under for the day. And I'm like, oh, good, Hovland's through. He's in 100% of my lineups, or not 100%, close. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to stop looking. Next thing I do, I check, and McNeely's 6 over through like 14 holes, and I'm like, where the hell did he go wrong? Blow-ups don't concern me as much of a guy that never had a chance to make it. It seems like, McNeely probably made a double and got to even and was like, okay, I'm not going to make the cut. The cut's going to be 4 under. So I guess, yeah, I'm okay with going right back to him. 6,400, he's cheap. I'd rather play Tyler McCumber, who seems like he had a little bit better of a week. Another guy that's down there that we've played plenty of in our time, I'm sure, Matt Every. Really fire with the approaches last week. Terrible putting. Okay, the other 2 places missed the cut because of that putting. Are you okay to go back to somebody like him? And I'll throw one more name out that was terrible putting last week, is Hank Lebioda. Both those guys played well tee to green, or well enough to certainly get inside the top 25. Are you okay to go back to those 2 guys this week?
So Every, I don't mind as a flyer just because he's someone, at API specifically, but in general, the guy's got, when he gets it going, he can hang around and he can go low. In these events with the lack of win equity, you can have someone from this range really get in the mix. Someone will be. Lebioda, I have no problem with the play. I do think relative to the rest of this range, he might garner a little ownership. And for me, what I'll probably try to do is spend up a little more to someone like Harry Higgs, who's another young guy, but he's on the right side of the draw, played well. And then I have one, this is kind of in the egregious section, Brian Stewart. is a guy that, again, I know I'm hammering this with every person we talk about, right side of the tee time, can really get hot with the putter. Now, he's not a great ball striker, but not going to be popular. And so, when we're talking about large field tournaments, that's the type of guy I'm willing to take a stab with, because we know he can gain 6, 8, 10 strokes putting if he really gets going.
For sure. One quick note I will make on Harry Higgs there. Really like him as well. I wrote him up as one of my core plays this week. At 7,000, gained almost a stroke off the tee last week, gained a quarter of a stroke with his approaches. Those are the type of numbers at 7K that you want to see. And shout out to one of the chats that I belong to on Twitter. It's good to belong to. One of the guys actually knows him personally and says that he's continually gotten better throughout his career. Which is good. He went down to the PGA Tier Latino America, and of course, if he was in Latino America, he left home for quite a while from the Dallas area. So definitely like Higgs. I think he's a good up and comer. He's a grinder. Brian Stewart's another guy that obviously I've talked at length if you've followed me about my love for this guy. Ball striking has come down significantly. He had a nice stretch in the year, was able, obviously, to make it all the way to the Northern Trust, so no problem, of course, getting his card back. But the play has deteriorated last week. He gained around the green, and that was really it. Here's the thing. He's going to lurk around that cut line every single week. So fourth here in 2017, I can see why some people would be interested. I'm going to always have a couple of shares, but nothing too crazy for me this week.
Got in the same boat. And, this is really what we're dealing with, for lack of a better word. It's early in the year. I'm willing to take some buys on guys that we may look back and we say, wow, what a bargain they were at Sanderson Farms. And then on the flip side, some of these guys up top were going to be, can you believe you paid $10,000 for some of these? So it's one of those where you have a lot of options when you build. I'm not looking to get so insane. There are plays down here. You mentioned, Doug Gim's price. He's a player, there's no doubt. And I think as I go lower, I do want some of the Corn Ferry guys just because I think they score a little better on a macro level. But we did just get a question from our premium chat, and it's a guy that I'm not going to play, but we do like to talk about these because we want to inform people, going forward. So the new wonder kid, Akshay Bhatia, he's only 17. He's in the field. I am not going there. He's on the wrong side of the draw as well. You're not. Are you going there to the young gun?
So yeah, I'm just reading some of our chat now about my microphone.
Dear God.
Yeah, I had no idea what's going on.
Don't even get me started, please.
That's hilarious. Did you not hear it before we started?
It like slowly transitioned. It was insane. It really was. You'll watch back the show after.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Okay, so Akshay Bhatia. Let's talk a little bit about him. He came to Valspar, so I followed him around for probably 3 days, to be honest with you. Got a really smooth swing. When you're turning freaking pro at 17, you got to have a smooth swing, right? So that's kind of goes without saying. But he does have a lot of game. He was playing out there with John Rahm, so obviously he's got the right connections. Obviously this kid is likely going to be a star, but we also saw the last time a 17-year-old came out on tour, he got wiped off the face of the planet. And I'm talking about Ty Tryon. I don't know if you remember that from a blast from the past. If you've been following golf long enough, it seems like you have. That's kind of what I'm looking at this is, but I think Bhatia is a little bit better.
Yeah, my whole thing is we just don't know, and I'm not going to be the one to try to guess. So I guess he could play well, but there are so many other, just to throw out another name, Braden Thornberry is someone, he's basically the min, and I've seen enough of him to, if I'm going to take a crazy flyer, I would go with him. He's certainly a little older, and he's got some experience, particularly at St. Jude. So I just see no reason to try to chase someone that I'm sure probably in time we're going to be playing, but just not right now.
Yeah, and it's funny, they made that new rule, the Hovland rule, we'll call it, right? Where a player qualifies for the U.S. Open via exemptions as an amateur. They're now allowed to turn pro and keep those. Now, Thornberry And I'll go give you one more name, Lee McCoy. These two kids were playing as amateurs and came in fourth, respectively. St. Jude for Thornberry, Valspar for Lee McCoy. And now we haven't seen these guys since those wins. Or I shouldn't say wins, since those fourth place finishes, which basically would have given them Web.com or Korn Ferry Tour exemptions, if nothing else, or Korn Ferry Tour Finals exemptions, if nothing else, because of the money made. Very similar to the Doc Redman case. Now Thornberry's struggling. He struggled on the Korn Ferry Tour to even get status last year. So, yeah, I think Thornberry, he left college early, everything, and we haven't seen him. So maybe this is his start. He's got another sponsor exemption here. Maybe he can turn that into a top 10, get himself some status, if not for this year, for the Korn Ferry Tour next year, and try and work back. But he's got a long road ahead of him. He's got a ton of talent. I'm not going to sit here and deny that. But so did Lee McCoy. So that's what I'm a little worried about, is guys that, have placed, in the top 10 of a PGA Tour event before they turned pro. Something about turning pro. I mean, we saw Justin Rose, missed his first 25 cuts or something like that as a pro, and now he's top 5 player in the world. When you're playing for money and you're playing for your career, it's definitely different. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt. So, yeah, these guys, again, I think at most you maybe want one of them and some of your lineups, but don't be getting crazy. You did bring up, and I know we're jumping around just a bit, but Doc Redman's another player who I've been really impressed with. Now, let's see. I believe he's on the wrong side of the draw, but again, you can't have everyone, I'm not going to cut half the field. So Doc Redman looks good. His price just hasn't caught up to where I think it should be.
Agreed. He played well last week. He had maybe a couple of blow-ups where he was definitely playing around the cut line. Yeah, I think he only shot 1 or 2 under on the day one, and then came out to a really hot start on day 2. He burned the first 3 holes. So that kind of, I played him a lot last week at the same price. And I'm going to play him a lot this week. I know he's got the bad weather draw, but I can't imagine 65 guys are going to make it from the AM PM wave. I can't imagine that's going to happen. And Doc seems to be playing well. And I think we should say, I really think it's going to be a shot difference. But of course, we've seen a guy like Sung Kang, and I don't know if he's in this field, go out and shoot the exact opposite of everybody else. Go out and shoot 64 in really windy conditions, and everybody else shoots 70 or above. So it can certainly happen. You get hot, you play, the right. Yeah, always. So
it's not impossible. It's just on the. If we get to, and please, we'll be the first to say the weather can change on a fly. So when you see the PM, AM somehow be the answer, it's not, it changes. But if it is what we think it's going to be, more often than not, you don't want to make it harder on your golfers than it has to be.
Yeah, and this one will be interesting because we're expected to get the bad weather PM to AM. So after that AM wave on Friday, that cut could look pretty good for a lot of people. Then all of a sudden the good weather rolls in the afternoon. It could definitely create some carnage. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So, okay, a couple of the guys. Kevin Streelman, he was pretty popular last week. What are you doing with him? 7,900 in a field like this. Does he interest you?
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of that cash type play.
Okay, that's
pretty
what I thought.
Steady.
Yep.
Truth be told, I actually think I'd rather go to Kyle Stanley on most spots, unless I'm looking for stability. Now, Streelman fits the mold. He's someone, if he can get it out there, he can attack with mid-range irons. And we've seen, when he gets going, he's a quality player. There's no doubt. So I have no problem with the price or really anything about him. But I'll say that I do kind of find myself looking for maybe a little more variance in some of the guys that I'm playing.
I think that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, it's tough. I looked at, Grayson Murray is someone that I want to play a lot in this.
Oh, that was one. Yep.
But he is wrong side. But again, it's not like that's a death sentence. It's just not ideal.
Yeah, let's talk about Murray. He kind of fits the bill of the Cameron Champ type where he can absolutely bomb it out there. He's been playing some pretty good golf. I actually really don't know what happened to him. He lost his status midway through the year. Must have been playing on a minor medical and just couldn't make up for it. But last week, gained just about a stroke off the tee per round, kind of average on everywhere else. Ended up in 36th, but recent form, 4 straight made cuts. Always a withdrawal risk, though, and withdrew from this tournament last year. Came in 8th a couple of years before that, though. I don't mind Grayson Murray. I thought the price was a little expensive, though. When you can get guys like Tyler McCumber, who's played just as good as him, for $1,000 less. So I think maybe a little price point for me here is talked me out of it. But similar to Grayson Murray, at least in build, what about Sepp Straka, who was really, he took the anti-speed route, made cane strokes with his putter, his irons, and off the tee, and still missed the cut. It's insane.
Sepp Straka, man, there are a couple guys on tour. If he doesn't hit the green, it's over.
Yeah, so bad.
He hits the shot tracker where I'm like, oh, this is good because this can't be his real shot. It's obviously an error. And then it's just not an error. It's like he makes shapes, crazy triangles around the green. It's really bad. So last week he lost 3.5 strokes in 2 rounds around the green. That's just horrendous. So it's a risk reward. We know how good he is traditionally as a ball striker. But, man, that's a tough ask. Like, if the wind gets up and it plays a little tougher, boy, you don't want him scrambling. Andrew Landry was a guy who missed, I believe, close to the number, who I looked at. You got to be able – that's one thing I'll say, and I know we're getting to the end of the pod, but top 65 in ties, don't be afraid to take someone who misses, near that cut line. That is not a knock on them. You're not going to be ripping off 10, 15 made cuts in a row this season. It's that much harder.
No way. There's, maybe Rory McIlroy, but we even saw him last year not even make it. So Straka's on the bad end of the draw as well. We're just, of course, everyone can look this up. We're just letting you know just because it's in front of us and we're chatting about him. I don't think that should be the end all be all. If you're down to say Sepp Straka versus a Harry Higgs, okay, maybe I would lean Harry Higgs there just because he's got the draw and they seem to both be playing pretty well. But I will say, Straka, if he hits 18 of 18 greens, he could win the tournament because his putter seemed fine. Everything else seemed fine, but when he misses the green, it's really bad. So, did we miss anybody? Okay, so somebody else asked us about Batia in our premium chat. We covered him about 15 minutes ago, and I said that I followed him around at the Valspar and got to know his game at least a little bit. He's got all the packages. He's a great putter. He said many times that he relies on his putting, so that's a good thing for here. But he's on the bad side of the draw. He's super young. It's a wait and see. I don't think he's ready to go out and beat Scotty Scheffler and Emiliano Grillo, Byung-Hyun Ahn, Lucas Glover. No. I don't think he's ready for that, but I think at 6,100, if he gets to the cut, he's going to give you value for sure. He's going to make birdies because he's such a good putter.
Well, there's no doubt about that. For me, it's an unnecessary risk. So I'm not there on him. Someone just asked about Matt Every. We covered him, I think, as a reasonable flyer at 6,400. No problem with that. But again, my strategy this week, just to wrap it up, we'll give a hot take. We'll bounce on here. I need to ice my ribs. I've critically injured myself on the show. I'm going to try to build, as I always do, where there are certain dead ranges, and I think there's certain drop-offs where if I can pepper that low 7K range and really still have some room to pay up for the guys I want, lean to that AM, PM wave, that's really my strategy on a course that like I said, I don't know much about it because we haven't played on the DFS side. I have a somewhat idea of what I want to do, but I don't think it caters to one specific type of player.
Yeah, I agree. My first initial thought was, well, if Cam Champ wins, then just give me the top 20 in driving distance and gain one out of the last 6 events, and let's see if I can make a winner. But you see guys like Ryan Armour who, I can tell you firsthand, I might be able to drive it as far sometimes as Brian does, and he won this tournament. Was this the one that Grillo won a couple of years ago too? I don't think so. Nick Taylor was the other one that.
Yeah, Grillo won the other swing season event, not this one though.
Okay,
it was
the Sea Island, Georgia. Yeah, the Safeway out in the desert. Okay,
yeah, but
I think that it really goes to guys that can get hot with the putter. That's what we've seen statistically here, and you don't need to be that great with your irons. So I do think it opens it up. So, okay, I think we'll go into our hot take. I'll throw on my, what is that guy's name from Harry Potter? Not Harry Potter. Happy Gilmore. Sorry, I don't know where I get hurt.
Mr.
Guardian Leviosa. Yeah, what is that guy? It's like Mr.
It's Mr. something.
Biggs, Mr. I don't know.
Riley? I don't know.
Anyways.
While you're doing that and getting your hot take ready, we did have a question I'm just going to give in seconds from Myron, who said BMW PGA Championship, big event in Wentworth. I'll say this, you got to keep it in between those trees, stacked field. The one thing I want to point out is Justin Rose tweeted that he hurt his knee. He's going to try to give it a go, but I'd really tread carefully there. You know, you got Rory, you got Rahm, you got the big names. Pure ball striking, though. You need to be able to keep it in play.
Yeah, for sure. Somebody made a good point that there's $6.9 million available in the prize pool for the Euro, and DraftKings gave us nothing there. That's just what they do. It's been going on that way for years. So I am using the new mic. How do I sound? Do I sound like that guy, or is it going to slowly fade that way?
You sound fine now, but you did. At the beginning of the show, you sounded fine, and then slowly you turned into the guy from the Allstate commercial where he's like, "I can't tell you my name."
Allstate.
You know,
David Palmer.
Mr. Landry. That's a stupid commercial. Mr. Larson. Thank you.
Larson. Yes.
Nick
Larson.
Smith, you are a hero. Good job. So my hot take. You know what my hot take is going to be is that Aaron Wise has the best finish from the PM AM wave. I like him the best out of that wave, and I really think even though he's got the bad draw that he can still excel at this course.
Okay, I got last week. I was a little sad that I didn't put more on this. My top two were Neiman Hovland, and Neiman ended up winning. I'm going to go with two this week. I mean, they're relatively, obvious plays, but I really think Emiliano Grillo finds himself back in the winner's circle and gets hot with the putter this week. Or Scotty Scheffler finds a way to scrape through the weekend in the middle of the pack and then gets hot on the weekend. I would say if he was teeing off tomorrow at 8:30, I'd be putting $1,000 on him to win. But he's not, and I really think that could end up being the difference come Sunday afternoon going up against Grillo, Hanan, who are playing in the morning. So, yeah, I got Grillo or Scheffler, though. Those are my two guys this week.
I like it. And so we're going to duck on out of here, but I do want to say thank you to Fantasy Draft, who, if they've seen the show, we might not be saying anything next week, but we hope they'll stick with us. They're doing some awesome things over there. Again, rake free. Which is huge. Sign up, promo code AWESOMO. And if you haven't signed up to the site, we would love to have you. Slack is amazing. You get all the content, the tools, and it's not just for golf. So we have a lot of deals running with the NFL. Basketball is coming in about a month. So it's insane. It really is. So AWESOMO Plus, all different types of packages. We'd hope you hop in there. And chat, it's been a really fun one. I'm not going to lie. So we're going to get on out of here. Same time next week. Jason's moved into his new house. We'll be ready to roll for swing season. So find us on Twitter. Hit that like button on your way out. And thanks, fellas, for hanging out with us. Good luck this week.